everyone. Hello out there in wonderful. Today we're going to talk about, if you could turn off your audio, Ariel, that'd be awesome. Today we're going to talk about self-care on Rails. But before we do so, about who I am, my name is Ben Greenberg. I am a developer advocate. We are mission control for community. We help
Ariel, I don't hear us, but the sound just dropped.
burden yourself, to have friends, have companions, to connect with others and share what is bothering you. So for me in this past year of 2020, there was a lot that bothered, basically using all of you as an unburdening. So thank you for that in advance. And what we want to do is talk about the ways in which Ruby and Ruby on Rails can help you make your life a little bit better. And specifically how it helped make my life and my family's life a little bit better. So first of all, there's an entire arena of doing good with code. You know, the Ruby community is full of initiatives do good with code. There's things like Rails Girls and you know, with Ruby Central has the Ruby conferences and Rails conferences and Ruby Gems and all initiatives. And you know that to this day, so many coding boot camps, they begin with Ruby. If they maybe they don't end there, but they begin with Ruby. It becomes the entryway into this world that we're all in for so many newcomers into this field. There's so much out there to do good with. And in fact, you could even argue that you might have an ethical obligation to good. This quote is from a talk that Sandy Metz gave at the last in-person Ruby conference in Nashville in 2019, in the before times. And this quote is from a professor of political science at the University of Chicago, where the professor said that those who have the most privilege, it could perhaps fall on them even more so to help make society better. And in almost every society on Earth, programmers, software developers are some of the most amply rewarded people. We're some of the most best paid people, best rewarded people. So one could argue within the construct of, you know, this presentation by Sandy's presentation, which I highly recommend watching if you have a chance, that we have a unique obligation to really do good in society at large. And in fact, you know, there's a thing called the Hippocratic Oath. Have you heard of this? The Hippocratic Open Source License? Does this sound familiar to any of you out there? This is a license. So what is open source licensing mostly with? Mostly concerned with, you know, my code for commercial purposes. I'm putting out code in the open source world on GitHub, on whatever. Can you take it and use it without attribution, with attribution? How can you attribute it back to me? Do you have to attribute it back to me? Not concerned with what the effect of the code is, right? This license, which is now gaining steam out in the general community, software community, in the open source world, basically says, I also want to be concerned with what my code is. And I want to put constraints on how you can use my code in ways that I'm going to deem unethical, immoral, for various reasons, and you whoever can't use this code if it doesn't paradigms laid forth in this license, even if you attribute it to me, you know, with like H1 font everywhere. It's amazing, you know, Ben wrote this, but if Ben wrote this, what you're doing, and the license restricts it, then you can't use it. So there's a lot going on in the world when it comes to things like that. But amongst all of the idea of doing good in the world, doing good in the community, doing good with your code, there's something that we often forget, and I'm going to speak for myself personally, and maybe you also can fit in this category. We often forget ourselves, taking care of ourselves. You know, there's a lot to say about if you're not for yourself, then who's going to be for you? And, you know, this can be somewhat of a loaded idea. the concept, the very idea of self-interest, that you matter, that what you do and what you value and who you like and what you want to hang out with and what kind of things you want to do, that all these things actually are important, that we are told so often in life that we don't matter, that always put other people first. And this quote from the Midwest Academy Manual, which is sort of like the textbook for community organizing, it came out of Chicago from a school of thought from Saul Alinsky and sort of the whole 1960s movement of community organizing, basically says no. Take that out and throw it out. What actually matters is to reconstitute your vision as not like, well, there's you and you don't really matter because you're just yourself, to put yourself back with everyone else and make sort of a chorus of voices, and you need to synchronize yourself with everyone else and understand that your voice is amongst that chorus of voices. And you, just as you take care of others, you have to take care of yourself too. This almost doesn't sound revolutionary, but yet it's so revolutionary. Like, we're taught so often to not think about ourselves. But we do that. We sublimate ourselves, we forget ourselves, and it can lead to all sorts of issues. So it's not a bad thing to be self-interested. It's not a bad thing to take care of yourself. And there's so many instances of how this happened and manifested in this past year with coronavirus. This quote is from the New York Times talking about how youth psychiatry wards were filled in Europe, as they were throughout many parts of the world. Children, adolescents, adults were really suffering with the constraints of the pandemic from an epidemiological, from a health perspective. What made us fine health-wise from a physical health perspective kind of obliterated for many of us our mental health, and really caused a real weight on our ability to feel like alive, our ability to feel like part of the world. So the things that kept us safe from coronavirus really hurt us, to the point where there were people in in England, psychiatrists were recommending that children break the lockdown in order to cope, because they were becoming suicidal. They were gaining suicidal thoughts because they were so alone. So trying to weigh the mental health and the physical health and how you kind of balance those two things is not an easy thing. And taking care of yourself in that midst is really, really hard. So on the sort of the big macro level, but even on the micro level, this quote's from a blog post from the Dev blog, where this person's like, so my life before coronavirus, I went to work, I went to the coffee shops, and I had a partner, have a partner, maybe they don't have anymore, I don't know, but I had a partner, have a partner, and they would also do their thing. And now with the lockdown, we're confined to our small apartment, and they're working all day, I'm working all day, we're both in the same room, we never leave this space, and they're driving me crazy. Like, suddenly, like I didn't get into a relationship with you for lunch. Our relationship with you was like breakfast and dinner, not lunch. Lunch is you're supposed to be out of the house. But now I have you with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's like driving me like wild. So, even on the very small micro level, there was a lot of issues that we were all facing individually. And this was also me too. And I just want to share a couple examples for you for how we dealt with it and how, Ruby on Rails actually helped us deal with it. And they come from the lives of my kids, because, if you are a parent, or if you have children in your lives, or you're close to children in your lives, you know that children can occupy a really central part in your life as a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or a parent or a caregiver or whatever. And so for us, this manifested around birthdays and around health submission forms. And we're going to get to that in a minute. And those people here in the Tel Aviv space, when I said like Hatzarat Briut, like health submission forms, I saw eyes rolling, like, we all have the stories with them. So parenting is not easy, as is the most obvious statement Captain Obvious could ever make. Parenting during a pandemic is freaking hard. It's really hard to parent during a pandemic. And for my kids, and maybe others who have kids can resonate, birthday parties at a certain age are really important. And kids like plan their birthday parties for a long time. They are really excited for them. So we come to 2020, and it's my son's 9th birthday party. He just celebrated his 10th one a couple months ago, and it was in person. It was a real life game of Among Us. It was awesome. But 2020, what were we going to do? We started running through all the lists of ideas for a birthday party, and none of them could work. You can't go bowling, you can't go to a movie, you can't do really. And he was getting really depressed. So I essentially said, Rails has to come to the rescue. And I looked at my computer and I typed Rails new birthday party. I didn't exactly know what would be in that birthday party yet. I'm gonna build something that's gonna not have him be so sad. Because as a father, I couldn't stand seeing him so sad and I wanted to help him. And so I went and okay, Rails new birthday party. What am I gonna do with this? Well, thankfully, there are things that can actually help us. One of them is a technology called WebRTC. You may be familiar with the WebRTC. It's an open standard. It's available in your browser. It allows you to do real-time communication in your browser, basically. Audio, video, screen sharing. In fact, this very platform we're on right now is probably powered by WebRTC. And WebRTC is really cool. But like a lot of things, WebRTC can get pretty complex. So initially, it's you have a front end and you're manipulating the DOM, the browser the experience, and you have event listeners and you're waiting for people to subscribe to the streams and you are adding them, or if they disconnect, you're taking them out of the stream and all that kind of fun stuff. But when you eventually start getting into the complexities of it, it's kind of like golf in that this quote from Honor Palmer really, I think, resonates. Golf is deceptively simple and endlessly complicated. It satisfies the soul and frustrates the intellect. Well, I think the same is true for coding. And WebRTC is incredibly complex when you start trying to use it in some ways which, beyond, I'm going to have a one-on-one chat with you. I'm going to have your video feed and my video feed, and we're going to share a video feed. That's great. That's simple. What the idea we wanted to manifest for his birthday party was we would have two separate views in the app. One would be everyone would be hanging out together, sharing their video and chatting from their computers. And then my son, as the party moderator, admin, whatever, would switch views to watch party. And then it would go to a watch party view, and then he would have his screen share of Netflix or something, and there'd be a text chat on the side happening synchronously, and they could chat around what they're watching, kind of like you go to have a movie party, basically, kind of simulate that experience, but online. And then he could go from the watch party back to the chat view. So I was trying to code that with just the basic open standard of WebRTC, and I'm not going quite bald, but I'm going more bald trying to do that. And it was getting incredibly frustrating to do that. But thankfully, there is things to help you in this regard. And there's two of them in particular that I think are important to call out. Both companies, so these are commercial companies that help basically abstract WebRTC, simplify it a little bit. One is Vonage, and the other one is Twilio. Full disclosure, I used to work for Vonage. I don't work for them anymore, so everything I'm saying is fully non-commercial. Vonage and Twilio both allow you to make those API calls to them, tell them what you want to do with WebRTC, create any kind of complex video app you want, and it does all the WebRTC work behind the scenes for you, so you don't actually have to worry about it, basically. It takes care of it for you. And so Vonage has a Ruby SDK, which a lot of this is front end, so you have some JavaScript, but it has Ruby SDK, which allows you to sort of instantiate the server credentials and the tokens and pass it to the front end. On the Twilio side, it's all entirely on the Java SDK, JavaScript SDK. There is no Ruby SDK, so it's all JavaScript all the time. So depending on what your pleasure is, you pick your poison, essentially. And, like I said, you can't escape JavaScript, unfortunately. So you're going to have to write a lot of JavaScript for this because you are managing the browser experience. And, yes, there's apparently ways to do this in Rails, magical ways in Rails to make it like a dynamic browser experience, and it's awesome. But if you want to do it in the old-fashioned JavaScript way, the non-DHH way, then you have to use a lot of JavaScript to manage the browser and open and close things automatically without refreshing. So a lot of JavaScript is going on there. And what you end up is essentially set up the video chat, you set up the credentials, and then you create a bunch of different event listeners. And you can use the JavaScript SDK from either one of them to basically have a function call. Instead of okay, I need to build out this whole WebRTC thing, and it's going to be this long, I'm just going to make a function call to this API using this SDK wrapper, and it does it all for me. So that helped me basically create a video app. Video birthday party app. That's kind of exactly what it looked like a little bit. So it had a welcome page, this is in Hebrew because the birthday party was in Israel. Welcome to the birthday party, put in your name, put in your password, come on. And the first thing is you get the video watch party. I took this screenshot after, so there's only me in there, but you would see a bunch of different boxes and all the kids would be in the boxes and they could chat. And then you go into the watch party element of it, and you would have the sort of semi-transparent text chat on the side that so as they're watching whatever they're watching, they could like hang out and chat about it at the same time. And then they could go back and forth as often as they wanted, or as often as my son wanted to turn them back and forth, basically. He had a lot of fun with it. And it ended up being really awesome. And it really helped him in tremendous ways cope with that experience. Because, for me, when my birthday comes around, I'm like, oh, my birthday again. How old am I this year? Like, for him, he's still like excited about birthdays. Like, birthdays are still a big deal. And he was really pumped about it, that we were able to create for him something. It made me feel like super dad, like able to create something for him that helped give him a really great experience for him and for the kids in his neighborhood as well. And I think I said already that parenting isn't easy. So in addition to a birthday party, we also had to deal with something else. So here locally in Israel, we had a requirement for kids in school when school was open, which might have been in some months, Sunday and Monday, Tuesday, but half day Wednesday and 1 hour on Thursday, and then not for 2 weeks, and then Wednesday and then Thursday, but only on the second Sunday if it happens to be on the calendaring of school and opening closings in this country was, I don't know if other places, was mind-boggling for parents. Open, close, etc. But when it was actually open, parents' responsibility to also submit a daily health declaration every day for their kids. And the way it would work is you're in the morning, you're getting your kids ready for school. Is your lunch packed in the backpack? Do you have the books you need? I don't want to get a call from the teacher. Your son forgot this thing again. How bad of a parent are you? Like, you have everything you need. Do you have your mask? Because that's the thing now. Do you have your mask? Do you have your water? Do you have this? Do you have that? And then I also have to sit at my computer, log on to this website that's built pretty poorly, log on to the website, find where the health declaration thing is, which changes occasionally, submit it for one kid, go back, submit it for the kid, and then I'm done. Like, in what world does that make any sense? That was not going to happen. So when you're faced with, a pretty significant problem, and life is challenging as it is, one little thing can totally crash it. And we know what we do basically when we're faced with a major issue is we automate it, right? If there's something that I have to do every single day, I'm going to find a way. That's exactly what I did using Ruby. I built a gem, and the gem is called School Declare. It's still on Ruby Gems. And essentially what it does is it scrapes this website, this Israeli Ministry of Education website, goes through the website, and there's actually a little bit of a cat and mouse I played with the Israeli Ministry of Education, because initially they kept on realizing I was submitting it in a way which I wasn't supposed to submit it, and they kept on changing the website in slight ways to throw my app off. And then I went back and changed it, and then they changed it, and it was back and forth for about a week and a half until they gave up, and I was just happy. And I put this app on a GitHub action and ran it on a cron schedule of every single morning and had it send me a text message when it was done. So can you imagine how helpful that is, right? So instead of having to do this myself every single day, my app basically, validated for me that the form was submitted not just for one kid, but for both kids. It told me if there was an issue and would alert me if there was an issue as well. And then if there was an issue, it's probably because the programmers at the ministry changed something, so I have to go back and change it again. So for the first week and a half, this was more work for me, because I had to keep on figuring out what class name on a div they changed, or like how they slightly modified the app to break their website to break my app. But eventually, when they stopped doing that, it worked beautifully, and my life was never the same again. Basically, it was a tremendously helpful thing. So, what all of that is to say, though, is this talk. While we did talk about WebRTC and we talked about automating school declaration forms and all that kind of fun stuff, this was never really about code to begin with. This talk was actually about me personally, and I admit I was a little selfish. I was self-interested. I wanted to share with you a little bit about me and sort of what we had to go through and deal with, but it was also about you as people, as developers, people connected to technology in any sort of way, and it was about all of us. It was essentially the idea that you have to give yourself permission. And I know this is so trite, but trust me, and maybe you don't need to trust me because it does resonate for you. It's not obvious at all, at least it wasn't for me. You have to give yourself permission to actually take a step back and make your life a little easier sometimes. That it's okay to do things to make your life a little easier, to make your life just a tad less stressful, to make your life a little calmer, and to really remember about your self-interest. And don't forget that what matters to you matters. What is important to you matters. What's important to your family matters. And to not forget yourself when you're thinking about all the other responsibilities that you have in life. So I want to leave you with a few resources, and you can find these on the slides after the presentation or after this is over, which is links to the various code bases. So the school declaration gem can be found on rubygems.org if you want to use it for whatever reason. You want to submit things to the Israeli Ministry of Health website. And the birthday video app actually is open source, obviously, and don't make fun of my JavaScript, please, when you're looking at it. It was my best job at JavaScript, and that's at bit.ly/Rails birthday. And there's also links to Twilio video API and the Vonage video API and webrtc.org, which is the open standard that really powers all of it. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. If there's any questions, now is the time, or forever hold your peace.